What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude, that's Ethan, and we're here to talk some Spurs basketball. A tough week for the Spurs, Ethan.
Mm.
Um,
What
two
else new?
two losses to start off with the Lakers and the Blazers, where you're kind of neck and neck for the majority of the game, and then they go on a run. And because we're the worst defensive team in the league, we have no chance of getting back into it,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
put it simply. And then, of course, you have the injury bug hit on Thursday, which just allowed the Clippers to do whatever they want to, as they're competing for playoff seeding right now, and we're competing for lottery seeding.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're kinda getting repetitive with the themes of
Right.
every game, but it's been pretty much the same story. Like you said, we're right there, if not in the lead for that first half. That 3rd
Hmm.
quarter or 4th quarter is where teams just turn it on against us. The Clippers game, that one was just, a blowout. We lost by
Yeah.
38, but that's when a basically fully healthy LA Clipper team, they didn't have, uh, John Wall, but otherwise, I'm pretty sure they were, like, all healthy. They had Trey Mann, Kennard,
And we
George,
had
Kawhi.
3 rotation players out and had to call
Mhm.
up Blake Wesley.
Didn't help that Sohan is probably our best perimeter defender, so who's gonna guard PG or Kawhi?
And you take out
Uh,
Romeo too, and Jay
Romeo
Rich. Like, those
also,
are all good, decent
really solid
defenders. Right.
defenders, and all 3 have become a very pivotal part of our offense as well.
Mhm.
Like, Sohan, I know he has his struggles every once in a while, but he has found a consistent, like, 10 to 15 point performance pretty much any given night in the second half of the season. So with his injury, I feel like we've really seen what he does for us
Yeah.
offensively.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows what he does for us defensively, but I think there's a lot of skepticism with his offensive game and how actually impactful it is.
And that's
Um,
come along more and kinda like the
mhm,
since the one-handed free throw, really.
for sure. But even in the sense of just playmaking for others, setting great screens, having high IQ basketball plays, making the right pass at the right time, all those things that he does that people don't necessarily see on the stat sheet.
Mhm.
It was pretty clear against the Clippers that we missed that. Now I don't think his presence would have given us a win, but I think hopefully it would have been a little bit closer than it
Maybe
was.
not a 40-point loss.
Yeah, maybe a 20-point loss.
Yeah, right, right. I mean, because look, if you look back to that Clippers game last week at home,
Hmm.
obviously he didn't slow down Kawhi, but there were like, if you watch the games, there were some possessions where, well, he forced PG to pass out a lot, which led to the assist that he had in that game. So that really didn't really stop buckets from being made. But the point is, he gave like, he at least annoyed Kawhi and PG. Where in this game, Kawhi and like PG went for 35, 7 and 3, and then Kawhi went for 27, 7 and 3 too. Actually, it was 4 boards for Paul George. I was looking at steals. Paul George
An
had 3
extremely
steals last night.
efficient
That's the
scoring as well.
thing, right? And that wasn't necessarily, well, I think it's more just about PG when I'm looking at this. He made him pass out a lot more, but they were just able
Hmm.
to wreak havoc, is the point with his absence, because he at least was able to switch and like harass them a little bit. Even if they're going to make the tough bucket, it's like that um resistance wasn't even there at all. That's what I was that
Yeah.
was what I was trying to say.
It doesn't help either that the Clippers have been on an absolute rampage the past couple
Yep,
weeks as far as shooting
they're
the
hot.
three. 18 for 38, 47% from three-point land. Everyone saw what they did to the Lakers. It was just a shooting display. So when you're out with those perimeter defenders, plus they're all hot, like that's really difficult to overcome.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention Norman Powell. He had a bad
Yeah.
shooting night, but still had 15. We know what he can do. And Robert Covington made up for it. Had a super
Yeah.
efficient shooting night with 2 steals and 7 boards too.
We actually out rebounded them, I'm seeing, but that
Really.
that percentage, that shooting percentage is really just what killed us, it looks like. And turnovers, we had 12 turnovers to their 5.
Yeah,
So
we had to
clearly
start
defense was an
Malachi
issue.
too.
Yeah, I didn't think he played uh, well, he got minus 23. He definitely getting guarded by Paul George,
He's a
Kawhi Leonard,
rookie just
Powell,
thrust into this
Covington.
situation. Yeah.
Not a great spot to be in for your first
Hmm.
start. I think it's his first start, right? Or just like his second
No,
start?
he's had some starts earlier in the year when we had the injury bug.
Okay. But,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting brilliance.
Yeah, I wasn't either. And yeah, I mean, like, when you take out the people that we took out, I mean, we've kind of like had to reestablish a new flow to the offense since Devin has been hurt,
Mhm.
and then we took out all of those guys, like
Yeah.
Jay Rich, Sohan, and Romeo Langford. Like if we're really talking about this past couple stretch where we've been able to be competitive in games, it like those three guys are a big reason, for that.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you take that out, I mean, it's like you're having to run brand new stuff. Malachi probably still doesn't know every play like by heart. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And he hasn't been in a starting role. KBD, I mean, obviously you can always plug and play KBD, but KBD is still, there's a difference between Sohan and KBD. Um, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that was just a tough one to watch. Like, I don't really remember much of that game because I was just watching it and I was like, this is over. Like, it's so bad. Like, I'm looking at
Hmm.
Isaiah Roby. Isaiah Roby had an efficient shooting night. Like, on the stat sheet, looks like he had a solid game, but I feel like most of that had to have come in the fourth quarter because I don't even really remember seeing him that much.
The only
Like,
thing I remember from Isaiah is he had one nice dunk.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
threw it down on top of somebody. I can't remember who it was, but that was it. Like, other than that, I don't remember a single moment. Um, but yeah, statistically, I guess he had a pretty decent night,
Yeah, that's probably
allegedly.
one of his better nights of the year, like
Yeah,
statistically at least.
yeah.
I guess we can talk a little bit about Blake Wesley. I don't really think there's too much to say. I just think he
Mhm,
was kind of called up into the. He didn't like
yeah,
obviously they took advantage of him a little bit because he hasn't played in he's been playing in the G League. Hasn't played against this type of competition in a while, right? Other than those 3 games he played here before. Um, but I will say, like, regardless of the stat sheet, he didn't look terrible. He actually looks like he plays a little bit like more efficient. Like you talked about
mhm.
that in the league, because he's not with Pop over there. He's not gonna do, he doesn't have the freedom to be blunt, um, which mitigates mistakes.
For sure. Yeah, I didn't think he looked scared of the moment, offensively at least.
Hmm.
Defensively, obviously, it was gonna be a struggle for him. It was a struggle for the whole team,
Right.
but offensively, he looked like he was getting into the sets well enough, making the right pass. It was just
Hmm.
the Clippers are so good defensively, he didn't really have an opportunity to kind of, you know, do anything special, but he also didn't make many mistakes. He only had one turnover in 21 minutes. I'll take that. I'll
Hmm.
take that on any given night from a rookie who's had problems with that in the past. Like, that's solid. 2 assists, 2 boards, 6 points. Nothing crazy, but I remember his first shot was a
He didn't try
3.
to force anything either.
No.
That's what
No.
you like.
His first shot was a 3. It was in rhythm. And at first I thought, because usually, Malachi or Sohan, they get that open 3 and they kind of hesitate for a second because they're like, should I take it?
Yeah,
I don't know if I
yeah,
should.
yeah, yeah.
He just pulled. He pulled
Yeah.
up. He missed it, but I'm fine with him taking those shots.
Yeah, he definitely has that I would say in the small amount of sample size that we've seen of him playing rotation minutes on the actual Spurs. Um, he definitely I feel like is a little bit less out of the 3 rookies. Very small sample size. Again, that's a key asterisk here. But from what we've seen from him so far out of the 3 rookies, he has the least amount of hesitation, it feels
Yeah.
like, when he plays, which is good. I mean, he's going to make mistakes, but it's like there's so many times earlier in the year, especially for Sohan when he was really struggling before he,
Hmm.
started making
Hitting
some more
some threes.
plays, right? Making some threes, the one-handed free throw, just being in more rhythm offensively, finding his spots more, figuring out, where he can find his open looks. Um, that was real tough there. He was very hesitant in a lot of situations. And same with Malachi as well. But I feel like you really got to see it with Sohan in that tough stretch that he had before the one-handed free throws, where we were, where it was just rough for a little bit. I think that was like also during when Devin and Keldon were hurt there for a second. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
about
remember.
about
Yeah,
it coincided sort of.
that was just such a like
Tough.
even though we're talking about like a blowout loss this week and a 0-3 week, like that Spurs team feels so far away from the one that we've been watching recently. Like cuz at least with
Really
this
does.
last loss it's like okay, well 3 of your rotation players are out and you're already like a bottom tier team in the league.
Yeah.
It makes sense. But our man Birkin Al Altanok said,
Out.
"Could Romeo and Josh be back tonight?" And this is a good segue to the other thing that we're going to talk about, Ethan, which is the Suns game
Mm.
tonight. And there is a chance that Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson, and Jeremy Sohan all play tonight, but they are just listed as questionable. So we'll have to see. But hopefully they play. They could be able to. They're not out. The other games they've been out. I think probably after the way that Clippers game went. Maybe we don't get all of them back tonight, but I have a feeling like at least one of this three, or probably like two of this three, um, will be back. I would say Romeo Langford for sure, because I think he was out before. He was out
Hmm.
2 games. So I don't
Yes.
know. That could maybe mean that he's out again because it's a worse injury, but it could also mean that he's had more time to recover.
Yeah, I would also. It's hard because they all have reasons for to come back. Like Romeo has been out longer, so it would make sense for him to come back. Sohan's so young, might as well play him. Like, how hurt can he be at
Hmm.
this point? And then Jay Rich, trade value. We kind of need you to
Yeah.
play, like, so you can
And it was
continue
a
to boost
back to
that.
back. That's the other
Hmm.
thing. So, like, how serious were those injuries? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
another good point too. I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them are back tonight. But just looking at this injury report, there's another note here on Devin Vassell, and this isn't anything crazy. But he was spotted Tuesday doing some walking on a treadmill. So,
Hey,
starting a little bit of that rehab from surgery. Um,
wait, where was he spotted?
well, I guess this is January 17th. I don't know. Tom Osborne of the San Antonio Express News report. So I'm sure it was just at the
Yeah.
practice facility. They just
I was
saw
gonna
him.
the way like that
Yeah,
sounded like, oh, he's at
I
like a
know.
Planet Fitness walking around.
I
Oh,
know.
good for him.
hey, hey, shouldn't you be consulting or doing all of this recovery with the Spurs medical staff? Why are you here?
He likes the grunk. Is it the grunk alarm?
He likes to just no. He just likes to flaunt himself in public.
Yeah. No, I love Devin. I hope he comes
Oh my
back
gosh.
after the
Well, they
All Star
said
break.
he should be back. He's gonna. It's just that was the procedure. They were just
Mm,
that was just like the latest update they had for Devin.
yeah.
So our man Keith Young says, "I'm starting to think all this trade talk isn't actually going to lead to anything." That is very fair. Look, as
Hmm.
Spurs fans, it's like, I kind of mentioned this on the previous episode. I can't remember which one it was, but I probably said it throughout a couple times. It's just like since that Derek trade last year, and then kind of a little bit of like the Zach Collins and the Doug McDermott signings,
Hmm.
basically since the end of the DeRozan Aldridge era, like the Spurs have been making more moves, right? There was that
Yeah.
one year with, well, maybe a better way to put it is the Derek DeJounte era. I think that's a better way to put it, with those guys getting moved and, letting Lonnie go as well. Um, it just feels like, and it feels like the Spurs are in more rumors. They've actually made more moves where, like the 2 decades prior to that, we didn't see anything like that. Like probably the biggest signing we made was Steven Jackson, and that was probably the biggest trade we made when we traded him out.
Lamarcus.
Well, oh yeah, Lamarcus, duh. I
Yeah.
can't believe it. But trade wise,
Yeah.
like what other big move
There
did we?
wasn't one.
There wasn't one, and then that's because of the continuity. You have 3 Hall of Famers. It's not really hard to get people to want to
Hmm.
stay. Um, and you could sign people a lot easier. You don't really have to value the trade market as much. But in the situation the Spurs are in now, they definitely do value it a lot more. But I can understand why any Spurs fan would think that maybe none of this happens. I feel like that's been a caveat in the back of my mind when we're talking all of this, because it's just their track record. Like it would be
Yeah.
different if they didn't have 2 decades of doing that, but they do. And even before then, like during the who's was it Larry Brown? Was that the coach before Greg
Before Pop.
Popovich?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like even in the Larry Brown era, the George Gervin era, like they weren't very, I mean, obviously there were less trades in general then, but they still, like the Spurs were never like
Yeah. They've
really,
never.
like these have been some of the Derek and DeJounte trades have been some of the biggest moves like really in franchise history. I know that sounds crazy to say. You could obviously put draft picks above them, but when it comes to trades, like those are the biggest name players that have had the biggest roles on our team that we've traded, whether it's the offseason or midseason. So I think that's why it's a little bit more believable, but there's also a lot of hesitancy
Mm.
just because of the Spurs.
Yeah, it's a weird trade deadline too, because I was listening to Brian Windhorst's
Yeah,
podcast about this, and there are like 12, 13 teams in the West that think they have legitimate shots of winning the
right.
championship, right? And in the East, it's like 8 or 9 teams. So there's a
Hmm.
lot more teams that have a shot here. Usually it's like what, top 4 teams from each conference that really
Right.
look to make moves like that. But now everyone's pretty much looking to make a move, but not that many teams have any picks right now. Like the teams that have the picks aren't necessarily looking to acquire a Jakob Poeltl
Right.
or a Josh Richardson. That's just
Because
not on
of
the
all the
table.
moves that have been made in the past, which kind of led to
Exactly.
this parity in the league.
Exactly. The Lakers have no picks. They have one first, and they really don't want to trade it. The Clippers, nothing. They can't offer anything. The Nuggets have picks, but they don't really need They gave it like what 2 for Aaron Gordon, so they're not really looking to make a move
Well,
right
and
now. I
now
don't
they've
think.
got Jamal Murray back, and they're right back at the
Yeah,
top of the West. So
so
it's
they're
like,
fine.
why do they even need to make moves? Yeah.
And then at the same time, Toronto apparently, this is all from Brian Windhorst. So if you want to go learn more, go listen to him on ESPN. But um, the league is basically
Don't
waiting
go
for
listen
the
to ESPN. Only
yeah.
listen
Only
to
listen to
SSPN.
SSPN. Just listen to what I'm repeating him that he said.
If you're a Spurs fan,
Yeah, if
if
you're
you
a
want to go
Spurs
for
fan.
trade talk, go check it out.
Yeah, he didn't actually mention the Spurs, but he kind of like alluded to it a little bit. He was
Okay.
like
Well,
the
that's
the
okay then. Then they can go
yeah.
listen to ESPN.
The Raptors apparently are going to be the first domino to fall this trade deadline because they're involved in so many different rumors right now and
Hmm.
so many possible 3-team deals and trying to get picks from other teams so they can get rid of Gary Trent Jr., Fred Van Vliet apparently because they're not excited about how he's been playing this season after getting an extension.
That
Who
was a
else do
big
they have on their
contract.
team? They have a big contract. I think they're looking to move one more guy from their team potentially, but they're looking to acquire guys like Jakob Pertl. We've obviously seen that rumor going around. So this could really be down to the last minute. I feel like the last couple days right before the deadline is just when we'll see a lot more moves going down. But until then, it's probably going to just be radio silence, and we're just on the edge of our seats waiting for something to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess just talking a little bit more about that, because that's just the talk of now. And I know we've talked about it before, but it seems like the talks that the Spurs are potentially involved in, obviously surrounding Jakob Pertl, um, and Josh Richardson and Doug McDermott. But just talking about the Raptors a little bit more, there's been the mystery third team in the three team
Mm-hmm.
trade with the Raptors, right?
Yep.
To potentially get the Spurs 2 first-round picks for Jakob Pertl. There's also more news surrounding the Raptors whenever it comes to OG Anunoby and potentially like getting 3 first-round picks for him, but that would also be through a three-team trade.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like with the smoke that we've heard, and like you said, who knows how true it is. But with the smoke we've heard and what Windhorse is saying, it kind of lines up. Um, so that'll be very interesting to see. But I agree with you. And usually, the more that we're talking about it, obviously there'll be like there was that one deal, like the Rui Hachimura deal that was already made for the Lakers. And we usually see a couple of those, but really it doesn't get too crazy where we just start getting notification after notification after notification until like the day of the deadline.
Some names to be on the lookout for. There's a lot of names that could be
Hmm.
traded though, Jude. Like I'm thinking Eric Gordon from the Rockets. He's a guy that a lot of people want. I mentioned Fred Van Vliet. The Nets want to move Ben Simmons, I'm pretty sure, even
Hmm.
still,
Wow.
because they've been having trouble with him getting just to
Uh-huh.
play. And obviously they could use some more size. Boston's been struggling. Are they going to make a move for Jakob Pertl? They could use another
It's
7-footer
another
rim
name.
protector. Who else,
The
man?
Warriors. The Warriors, that's another
Warriors.
team that's been, yeah.
The Suns even. The
Hmm.
Suns might try and make a move because they still have Jay Crowder and they don't
Hmm.
want him. The Mavericks, apparently Luca told the front office that he wants them to make moves. They
Yeah,
denied
I
that that's a
remember seeing
thing,
that.
but I believe it 100% because he's
Honestly,
basically
they
by
could use
himself.
Jakob.
They could use Jakob. My cousin who I live with is always talking about how he would take Jakob. He's not going to give us 2 firsts for him, but he
Hmm.
wants Jakob Pertl on that team just to be another rim protector next to Christian Wood because Christian
Yeah.
Wood's really like a fragile 5. He's more of like a stretch 4 in a
Right,
way.
right, right.
But they could also use Jay Rich. I know they used to have him, but I think they could use some extra punch off their bench, or maybe even start him next to Luca, be a floor spacer.
Hmm.
If we bring Dinwiddie in off the bench. Uh, and what's his name? As usual, John Collins is also available.
Yeah. Feels like every year.
Every year he just demands a trade, and then he's like, "Nah, I guess not."
um, I was just thinking of something while you were talking, and I think it's kind of eluded me. But I think what I was thinking about was just like when we were talking about all the moves that were made, and this goes back to like the summer of kind of Kawhi PG signing with the Clippers. Like
Hmm.
right now, I think we're really seeing the effects of that in this season, and we saw it last year too. Like there's definitely been more parity, but like when you're talking about the picks, like there were a lot of teams that made moves to get star players, and of course compensated teams, and that ties into what you were talking about earlier. Is it's like the teams that want picks already have a lot of them, like
Yeah,
or like um, the teams that are vying for these players to whether it's a Jakob Pertl or a John Collins, an OG Anunoby, whoever, they. I'm completely losing my train of
They
thought.
don't
I
have
know
the
what I was.
capital to
Yes,
trade for him.
yes, they don't have the capital. Exactly right. Those teams don't have any picks because they've traded them away to get in the position that they're in right now. So that also ties into the Brian Windhorst holdup. So I guess I'm just roundabout talking through this and thinking about it with you. The roundabout thing that I'm getting to here is more that it probably will just continue to be up
Mm.
until the deadline.
There might be fewer trades than usual, but I have a feeling there will be more 3-team deals than in the past.
That was another thing that I was thinking of too. Because of that situation, there's more
Yeah.
3-team deals, which I feel like holds things up more. But
Mm-hmm.
and I could see less trades too. But another note I guess I would add is I think that they'll be a little bit more impactful
Yeah, I was
than
gonna say the same thing.
for like every move, even if it's not a star player, like it's going to be like this team is adding this, addressing this need, or it's they're impact trades. All of them will be, even if they're not star players, they'll impact players like a Jakob.
Mm.
I guess this was the other thing I was thinking of too. We've talked about like all of these rumors and kind of repeated them a little bit, but who are some people that maybe if the Spurs don't just get picks back, who is somebody that maybe they would take on in this scenario?
Ooh. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is the Russell Westbrook possibility.
Right. And that's one we haven't talked about. We forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a weird one because we've talked about how Russ is claiming he doesn't want to be bought out. Or this was what he was saying last year when the rumors were
Mm-hmm.
stronger about him, that he didn't want to be bought out. He'd want to be traded and then play for whatever team he got traded to, or just stay in Los Angeles. I doubt he would want to play for the Spurs, though. So that would probably just be a buyout situation. Are you asking like someone that I would be fine with bringing on to play?
That's kind of maybe not necessarily fine with, but just like realistically, who is somebody the Spurs could potentially bring in like
Okay.
one of these moves? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who is somebody the Spurs would bring back? It's kind of the more
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it, I feel like it's going to be like if we.
Luka Doncic.
Greg says Luka Doncic, right? That's what we all want.
Yeah.
But no, like it's probably going to be like a J. Rich Doug type. Like now that I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it, it's not really probably somebody on an expiring contract.
Wiseman.
That would
I'll
be
take
great.
Wiseman. Kyle Lowry. I don't
He's
necessarily want
yeah,
Kyle Lowry.
yeah.
I mean,
Are the Heat shopping him? I feel like I might have heard something about that actually.
yeah,
Not that we would bring him in, but
I think it's less the Heat shopping him as much as it is the fan base for Miami being like, we need to get rid of him
yeah,
because he's really been very disappointing and they aren't having the season that they
he's
want to
just
have.
older. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just is not as impactful as they were hoping. Man, I'm trying to think.
The Raptors championship was kind of the end of his prime,
Yeah,
as much as it pains me to say it.
you know who I would take from Miami?
Who?
He'd just be a backup big, but or he might even start. I like Dwayne Dedman.
Mhm.
If maybe
We've
Jakob and
had him here before.
yeah, I like him.
Gorgie and Dwayne.
I liked Dwayne back when we had him in like what was that 17, 16, 17?
Yeah, no, he was really good. That was on the Kawhi team.
Yeah, I was like
No, he was
I was
underrated.
wondering why we got rid of him or didn't get rid of him, why we didn't
I
sign him
think it
back.
was just we were kind of moving into a different phase.
Yeah,
We were going to
that's
try
fair.
to do the Derek and DeJounte thing.
Um,
Greg says we're going to trade for Bryn Forbes.
is he even playing anymore?
I don't think he's playing, but he's on Minnesota. He's on
Is
the
that what he's
roster.
okay? He's with
Yeah.
Minnesota. Okay, that's another team
They're
that could
going to
be
give
on.
us some picks
Yeah,
and Bryn
Minnesota.
Forbes for Jakob.
They don't have any picks though. They gave them all away for
That's true.
Rudy.
And they already have Nas Reed off the bench, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And they have Rudy. Yeah. No, that's another team that's giving
Oh,
everything away.
the Nets have interest in Romeo. I knew that they had interest at least early in the season for Jakob, but Nick Claxton's been playing pretty well. I think that they might have lowered their price for Jakob. But would you take on Simmons?
I don't want to. No, I don't want to take on Ben Simmons. We've had this conversation
Yeah,
before, and it's like, what happened? Like again, we're here
yeah,
again. Like another team wants to get rid of him. I don't want to. I don't even want to go on this rant, but it's like it's fitting. I have LSU gear on right now because I've been
yeah.
watching this dude. Like, I don't even want to. I don't want to say waste
You don't
his
got to. You don't have
talent,
to get
but
into it.
it feels like that. You know,
Yeah.
like God bless him, but like something. It's up here though.
Yeah.
It,
It's
it
all
has
mental.
nothing to do. But I don't even know like how much does he care. He's just like, I feel like he's just like, well, I've got this money.
Hmm.
I'm gonna get it regardless. Like regardless of how I play or how I act, I'm getting paid this. You know.
Hmm. I
Oh,
feel bad for Ben Simmons because I do believe that he probably does have attitude problems, and I do believe that he probably doesn't have the work ethic that would really elevate him to like a
I
really
just
really
don't
terrific player.
feel
But I
like
do,
it would. Go ahead.
you
I'm
know,
sorry.
I don't want him either. To be frank, I don't think he'd fit on our
With the
roster.
Spurs culture, that's what
Yeah,
I'm talking about.
but I still feel I can't help but feel so badly for him because despite all the things that I just said that are negative about him, I feel like he completely has just lost his like lost everything like
No, he
mentally.
was on track to being a star player. Even though he
Yeah,
couldn't shoot, he was on track to being a like this level contract player.
he attacked, he would dunk, he could finish. He can't even finish anymore. Like the dude literally will miss easy finger roll layups because he's
Yeah.
I don't know, scared of getting fouled or scared of just missing it. Like he's so in his head because of what
It's
Philly, the
sad.
city of Philly, did to him
Yeah.
and the media, and so and then on top of all that, he's got attitude issues allegedly. I just I feel bad for him, but I don't want him.
Yeah. No, I feel bad for well, it's because I mean like he could have flourished, you know.
He could have,
It's like
and he did for a
Greg
second.
Oden if he didn't have injury if the injuries were just like his psyche.
Yeah,
Like number
hmm.
one pick too. Like, oh my gosh, man.
So sad.
It's as much as I was giving him crap, it really is. Like,
Hmm.
it's crazy how his career is gone. Anyways, um, let's see. We didn't even talk about the Suns game. I did the
Yeah, it's
injury
tonight.
report, and we didn't even talk about it. The point is, if those guys play, Devin Booker, Campaign, and somebody else is out. Landry Shamet, that's who's
Okay.
all confirmed out. They're not day to day or questionable. They're out tonight. So the Spurs should have a chance to get a win tonight. It's going to be tough still with Aiton. And I'm forgetting somebody else, Mikal Bridges. Um, they're still a better team than the Spurs, even without D-Book, I would say. But we should have a chance tonight. We should be able to keep it competitive if those guys come back. But if they don't come back, it'll be closer. It won't be like the Clippers, but it'll probably be like a 20-point loss.
I would echo it. I would echo that for sure.
Our man Birkin says that Simmons is scared of having bad stats. That's what he says.
It really is. That's what it
No,
boils down to.
it's just like the stuff. Like, remember the Philly video in the playoffs that went crazy when he was right under the basket, wide open, and like
Passed it
past
off.
it. He's continued. Like, there's more clips of that type of stuff coming up in Brooklyn, and it's just
Hmm.
like, no. But you know, I understand a little bit of the appeal to the Spurs because when you think about it, like one, it's like if anybody can fix him, it's Pop. But also, it would be a completely no pressure situation where
Yeah.
like even though now he's in Brooklyn and it's like it's still better, I'm sure. Like that's also a pressure cooker. It's like we're trying to Kyrie, KD, we're trying to win a title for our legacy for greatness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so maybe if you went somewhere with less pressure, that would be better. But like with the attitude issues and just like you can just see with his demeanor, it just does not feel like it would fit very well here. Like I feel like if
Mm-mm.
he's in his own head because of all the criticism he got in those situations, like that same criticism, maybe even while it wouldn't be the same in the media necessarily, it would probably be worse in practice in
Hmm.
San Antonio. You know what I mean? So if like he's
Yeah.
having trouble with that, like with the stuff like DeJounte just talked about too, like is he
Hmm.
really gonna fit here? Like I don't know
It's
if that
tough.
would go well. That would probably just not go well at all. But
You know what? For the sake of doing it, let's
what?
trade Jakob for Ben Simmons in one first. Start Ben at the center spot.
Yes, yes.
Don't let him bring the ball up the floor. But just like give him the ball in the post and let him just be Boris Diaw 2.0, but with a better handle. Just pass. Like I know you don't want to score, but just make and dunk. Like that's all we need
Let
you
me
to
look at
do.
his contract. If he was on an expiring contract, I would
Yeah.
actually be willing to do so. I'm not even lying.
Can you imagine the front court passing with Ben Simmons at center and Jeremy
Well, that's
Sohan
the
at
other
power
thing. Like he
forward?
needs to play. He like I think at this point,
He's
I
playing the
feel
wrong position.
yes, he needs to play like the 4 and the 5
Yeah.
straight up.
6'10", 6'11", strong dude, really good, versatile
Dude, he's
defender.
got 2 more years of 37 and 40 million.
Yeah,
He's
no.
getting
No, thank
paid
you.
35 million to do not that much.
Yeah, never mind.
Like
I don't want to. It'd
that's
be a fun idea.
crazy, that contract. I can't believe. I mean, I know you got to go for it if you're Brooklyn, but like that's crazy. I would have just been. I would have never traded
No.
for it. Like if I was another team, like it would be very hard for me to take that on.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I don't. It'd be a cool experiment to put him at the center spot for the Spurs, but for 37 million, no, thank you. If we are going to legitimately try and build around whoever we draft next year, plus Devin, plus Keldon, like we're going to need that cap space
Mm-hmm.
to not only pay them, but maybe bring in somebody in the next couple years in free agency. So rather not get all that cap into a Boris Diaw molded center.
All right, Ethan. Can I leave you and run to the restroom and be right back?
Yeah,
All right, I'll be
sure.
right back, y'all.
Okay, all right. So now it's just the Ethan show. Let's see what Gregory has to say. Him and Gobert just don't give you enough offensively to win. Yeah, they both have kind of similar games in the sense that they're both really solid defenders, but once you figure out how to get past them, then they basically become potatoes on the court because you can't give them the rock offensively. They're just going to do something stupid with it. And then defensively, how much anymore in this league can you really be impactful if all you can do is play defense? Because this league is predicated on just scoring at this point because you can't touch anybody. The era of Tony Allen's and Gary Payton's, I think that we've kind of moved past that era, at least for the time being. What's the lowest pick for the season to be an L? I think we need at least a top 4 pick. I mean, Jude has talked about it. This draft is loaded. So really you could probably get a very, very good player in top 10. But I obviously we've struggled so badly, and I think it's pretty clear what the goal of the season is to get as high of a pick as you can. And when you have guys like Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, and Judas mentioned the Thompson twins, like it would be very disappointing to have gone through such a horrible season and not land a top 4 pick
Are you
at least.
responding to this question?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying it. I mean, I would want at least a top 4, top 5. Like any less than that, and it's like, why the hell did we try so hard to lose if that's all we're gonna get? So
Yeah, Greg says after 2, it's a crapshoot. I'm scared to not get a top 2 pick.
that's
Yeah.
the dream.
Yeah, right. Because with those two, it's I mean, it's just so legit. Speaking of that, the G League Ignite are playing the Austin Spurs in their next game. So if y'all want to check out Scoot Henderson and see a little bit of the Spurs prospects as well, definitely tune into that. I don't know, that may be today, actually. Let me check. But the reason I brought that up is not just because of Scoot Henderson. It's because the other thing that I wanted to talk about on this episode, Ethan, was Charles Bassey
Mm,
and freaking Dominic Barlow.
yes.
Speaking of a Spurs win this week, they beat the Mavs G League team, the Texas Legends, 131 to like 101.
Were they in
So
Dallas?
no, they were in
Okay,
Austin.
I should have gone to see them.
No, they were in Austin. And anyways, I'm trying to get to the G League. The point is, Charles Bassey had 40 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
And my dude was 2 for 3 from the 3-point line and was pulling up from the mid range on a couple different buckets. With all of this Jakob trade news, like that's the other thing that kind of legitimizes that smoke to me a little bit. Like I said, it could not be true, but that gives me a little bit more belief that it's possible because of the fact that if we trade him for picks, we can easily just call up Charles Bassey. And I mean, we've
That's
already
it.
seen him play really well on the actual Spurs this year. So and he's definitely, I mean, rotation player in the league for sure.
Yes,
No
for sure.
doubt. He's just been dominating. The G League also has this what is it called?
Next up game or whatever.
Yes, the next up game. And I don't know if I sent this to you, but Charles
Mm-hmm.
Bassey is 4th in votes for that right now. So, I mean, he's been averaging like 25 and like 12. So it makes sense. But I mean, it's too easy for him down there. He big bodies everybody. He was catching lobs, setting screens, and shooting now. So it's like our man Greg. He was in the comments earlier. Spurs versus everybody was saying on Twitter that it's like he's the Jalen Duren. For all of
Mhm.
us that were asking for him, he's basically that, and he's got a jumper. And I feel like we've kind of unlocked some potential there for sure with the way that the Sixers just let him go. Um, Still just 22 years old. I mean, really, like that could be. It's almost like a rookie. It's like having a
Yeah.
rookie because I mean, obviously, it'd be somebody who played 4 years, but still, um, just a really good find. And I'm excited to see him have a consistent role on the team. Um, if we do move Jakob, just because I feel like his potential has been raised since he's come to San Antonio. Obviously, we're biased, but like the stuff he was doing, he's the stuff he's doing in the G League and the stuff he was doing on the actual Spurs. Obviously, some of it's empty stats, but there's also some wins in there too. He was not doing when he was in Philly. And obviously, he's from San Antonio too, so that could kind of give him a little bit, of extra motivation to, work hard at the second opportunity. Um, but also, I really think his potential, I mean, like, he's more physical than Jakob, straight up. Like he's got more physical attributes. Obviously, he's not as tall as him, but when it comes to just like strength, he can
Mhm.
do things that Jakob can't do. Like Jakob's not catching lobs like he is. Also, Jakob's not shooting like he is. Like I know this sounds crazy, but like watching that game, I know it's the G League and combining some of the stuff that we've seen from him on the actual Spurs, like maybe he has a higher ceiling. That sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy right now because Jakob is so good defensively and he does so much stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But the point is that Charles Bassey is a very good like fallback option in the
Mhm.
situation the Spurs are in right now because you can bring him back on a cheap contract next year if you end up striking gold and getting Wembanyama. I know it's Wembanyama, but I just like saying Wembanyama because it's fun to say. And it adds a little Texas twang to the end of
Mm.
it,
Yeah.
So we're trying to make sure
Wembanyama.
he's as Texas as possible prior to the draft. Not Houston though. Houston, we do not want Houston to get him. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. We haven't even talked about that, dude. Like, because they're in our division, they're the other team like
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and
It'd be
honestly, they would
horrible.
definitely prefer him over Scoot because they've already got guards.
Yeah. Well, shit. They already got. Sorry. They already got forwards. So
You
they
do.
would run KPJ, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith at the 3, Wembanyama at the 4, and Alperen Şengün at
Yeah,
the 5.
that's I don't want that for my biggest rival.
That would be horrible.
Yeah.
Um, but what you're saying about Bassie, I mean, I couldn't
Yeah,
have
that
said
got
it
off
better.
tangent, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. He makes trading Jakob seem a little less like, I don't know, like the team's not going to fall apart necessarily
Right.
because he's continually improved from the start of his season to now. He is clearly more skilled than at least I thought he was going to be. I thought he was
Mhm.
just going to be kind of a really big guy that a little bit clumsy, but he can catch lobs and maybe get a block shot every once in a while. Like that's really what I thought he was going to be because he's been in the G League
Mhm.
his entire career. Um, but he has a low post game. He has improved as a jump shooter. He can be a threat from 3-point land. And defensively, I mean, he goes after everything. He combines the the strengths of Drew Eubanks with a little bit more skill. So like
Right.
blocking shots, being aggressive, throwing your body around, getting dunks, setting great picks. But then also, if you throw it down to him in the block, he's not going to turn the ball over as much as maybe Drew did back in the day. He's not going to, dribble it off his foot a little bit. He has more capabilities at that center position. Um, and then also Zach Collins has continued to improve.
Yep.
He has unlocked a new part of his game this season. So if you want to elevate Zach to that starting spot, trade Jakob for a pick, maybe hopefully 2 picks, bring in Bassie to back him up. We're trying to lose, right? So
Right.
might as well throw him into the fire and see what he can do in the NBA because so far what we've seen has been pretty damn good.
Yeah, and not everybody like dominates in the G League like that
No,
either. Like I
not at
really
all.
think like he may have this sounds crazy, but he may have a higher potential than Zach. Probably does. Just because he's
Yeah.
22. Like that's the I obviously there can be a ceiling on run, jump, and dunk centers, but he's
Hmm.
developing jumpers. He's developing more skills, which is probably why they like playing him in Austin so much. Um, and like I said, he's probably going to be in the G League next up game because of the stuff he's doing down there. It's not the same, but it is definitely translatable skills, for sure. But another person that we have to talk about down there is Dom Barlow. He's continued to be just on a tear, continued to be efficient. On a tear is a little bit of a stretch, but comparing the way he was playing at the beginning of the G League to
Mm,
where he's at now,
better and
it
better.
has been a tear for him. And the thing that I noticed the most watching that game, Ethan, I texted you when I was watching it is, and you can look at the stat sheets, and he had 17 and 7, hit 2 threes, can be that stretch four, getting better at that jumper, on top of, being a force on the boards. Didn't have a crazy game in that one because Bassey had 16, or Bassey, excuse me. I actually figured that out. It is Bassey.
Hmm.
Um, and then but Dom Barlow had 7, but he's had some other games where he's had some 14 rebound games, some 16 rebound games as well. But he does his off ball movement and his cutting. That's what I was texting you about. Like there was this one specific play where it was a fast break and he cuts to the middle, but you can tell he's doing it like on purpose. He's like, okay, this is my run lane. Like this is the lane I got to run through on this fast break, right? And that because of that, that draws attention from the other defender who has to kind of crash because it's like, okay, yeah, it's a one-on-one, but he's got the step on this guy, so he's going to have an easy layup if they get it to him in the paint, right?
Yeah.
So that dude collapses on him to kind of like double team a little bit, which leads to a wide open three in the corner. And there's actually, well, it wasn't a wide open three. It was, he catches the ball in the corner for a three, and then that person or the dude who had crashed a little bit inside has to, run to the perimeter as fast as he can and jump, right? And so that leads to a pump fake, dribble pull up mid range, and it was missed. But the point is that shot would not have happened if Dominic Barlow didn't make that cut on the run lanes. And talking to just like I do a podcast with the San Marcos High School basketball coach, and he's coached at a D3 university as well, and has some NCAA tournament wins on his resume. The point is, he knows what he's talking about, and he's a pretty solid basketball coach. Those run lanes and transition, like those are things that they go over, and they play a lot of transition down there in San Marcos. But to get off of that, the point is that is another translatable skill that doesn't show up on the stat sheet that I'm sure the Spurs are loving to see on tape. And so it was just like in the first quarter, he did so much, but his stat sheet was like blank. Like
Mm.
it was just like every possession, the way that I was thinking of it and the way I wanted to describe it when we got on here was he was just like, okay, what can I do to like make this the best possession possible? Like, what can I do to make sure we get a bucket here? Like, it doesn't matter if I score, if I do great, it doesn't matter if I get a rebound. It's just like, where can I place myself on the floor in our offense so we can have the most like successful chance to have a success, or the best chance to have a successful possession.
Mm.
That's the way that I would describe it. So
Yeah.
love the selflessness.
I haven't seen too many games live of him. I've watched, I think, probably 3 or 4 this season, but he's definitely a high intelligent player. Clearly, he understands how to play the game. What I like most about him is his versatility. He has the size and strength of a four, of a really quality four, but he moves almost like a three or a two.
Yep.
Like he runs like a gazelle. He's quick. Like you said, his off ball movement is surprisingly very good for someone at his size. So if he continues to improve his skills, and it sounds like he is on a game to game basis, just kind of figuring out more things, more ways to impact a possession or a game, and obviously fine tune some of his smaller things like jump shots, setting better
But that's gotten
screens.
better.
Yeah, obviously it's going to continue to improve over the season. We texted about this. He could be a really great hidden gem kind of project player that turns out to be
Yeah.
a matchup nightmare for other teams. Because how tall do you think he is? 6'11"?
No, he's 6'10".
6'10"?
Yeah.
6'10"
That's for the Spurs list him at least.
to run as he does. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like he's kind of has the what the Spurs were hoping to get out of Luka Samanic, but with a much better mindset.
Yeah, and he's from a tough place growing up. I don't know how I didn't find this like last year, but I was on YouTube like when I was watching this game, I was like, dude, like at halftime, I was like, let me like I remember like being excited about him and liking his upside, but there's two videos specifically that Overtime Elite did, and I've gone on my rant about that and Eamon and Nasir Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this highlight tape that's like 10 minutes. Go watch that. You'll see him dunking on people. That kind of you talked about how he moves like a three. That's very accurate. But he has the size of a four. And really, we're probably going to play him more at the 4 and the 5, which I don't mind. He's
Mm-hmm.
6'10", 220. Like that's for me. That's if he's mainly a 4 and then like his secondary position is center. Like that's totally
It's
cool with
totally
me.
fine.
Yeah, right. And especially, I mentioned this so many times. They're the prime example, but it's like, eventually when we move him up, that would be like a great person to play against Alperen Sengun. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Who's
yeah.
also 6'10". That he would match up great with the Rockets. So in those type of situations, it's good to have his versatility there. But there's the video with this highlight tape that's like 10 minutes. Go watch that because there's a ton of highlight plays. But then also go watch this like 7-minute interview with him talking about like getting ready for draft prep. And like within like the first minute and a half, he's like, people, where I come from, like don't become pro athletes. And I remember seeing the video that Overtime Elite put out over the summer when we signed him, or after the draft, when he was there, went undrafted, but then got a call from the Spurs offering the two-way. He was there with his mom, like profusely like crying on her shoulder. And that's the reason that he went to Overtime Elite, because he got offered $1 million. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was going to go play, I think it's some academy, and then like try to go play college. Like he was still like kind of in that mindset of like, okay, I probably got to go play college. But then Overtime Elite came around, offered him that. And he was somewhere else before. He was also on the New York Rens of EYBL. That's a really good, the Peach Jam is where the nation's elite prospects go to play. But like that was another reason why he played in OTE, because his family, like that family was different, that money was difference making for his family. And then just the opportunity to be in the league after all of that, even though you go undrafted, to get the opportunity, like you can tell, like he's been through a lot.
Mm,
And so that mindset, you're talking about Luka Samanic, like his mindset is probably the opposite of Luka,
yeah.
who like doesn't want to go back on a fast break, where like he's kind of had to like work through a lot and to get to this point, and he's grateful for every moment. It's a really good interview with him. And so I'm just super excited about him, and I'm like, I really think he has a super high ceiling. I know that sounds crazy, but I think he can be like a rotation big for the Spurs moving forward, whether that's 2024 or 2023, who knows. Um, but I think that, like you said, that was a project, kind of hidden gem type thing that the Spurs picked up there. And to see his progression the way that he has progressed, because there were some rough moments in the beginning of this G League
Mm-hmm.
season, to see him persevere through that and kind of show the stuff that we saw in his OTE highlights. Now we're kind of seeing more of that in Austin. And he's only 19. Like that's another thing. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can develop this guy for another 3 years. Like, anyways, I could go on and on, but I really
Yeah.
like Dom Barlow is the point.
I think you said it best to summarize Don Barlow's improvement. He's finding ways to make an impact on every single possession. That does not always include him scoring the ball.
Yeah.
Sums it up perfectly.
And that's what the Spurs are looking for. And you can tell that like he's buying into it. It seemed like he
Mm-hmm.
knew the offense really well too. Like when somebody moved somewhere, and really that's a testament to the whole team. They were running it pretty solid sets, and all that stuff seemed like everybody knew where they needed to go. But um his movement specifically, and in that game he was drawing a lot of attention because they had Blake Wesley got called up, and they had like two other starters. Sean D. Brown Jr., I think, is one. He was out. And then Jordan Attaway, I think, was also out in that game. Actually, no, I think Jordan Attaway played. But the point is, they had some starters out for the Austin Spurs too. So it was like, okay, him and Basie are going to be the main guys, and they were the two leading scorers.
Love to see it.
Gregory says, "My baby Al Horford agenda for Dom will be pushed." That's a really good comparison. That's a really good comparison.
Mm. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. We could use an Al Horford.
Good stuff from Charles Bassey and Dominic Barlow is the point. And so when we talk about the post-trade deadline Spurs, we obviously talked about how Charles will probably take those minutes. But we'll probably also see more of Dom Barlow come
Mm.
March, I think, because he's really been down there for the most part. There's been a couple games that we've seen, and I think that's a very good thing, which has led to the development that he's had now. And I think he probably still needs a little bit more time before we start
Mm.
giving him some spot minutes in the league. And as we mentioned on our last episode, we just have so many fours right now. It's kind of hard to like find minutes for him.
Hmm.
I think we'll see more of him kind of post trade deadline as well because of the way that he's been progressing. So
I hope so.
I hope so too. Any final thoughts on this episode of SSPN Live, Ethan?
I hope Sohan plays tonight, and so does Jay Rich and Romeo, so we can have a competitive game that ultimately we lose.
I think if all three of those guys play, I actually think I'm not saying we will win, but I think it probably goes down to the wire. Just because D-Book and they have 3 rotation players out too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I just need to get that 38-point loss out of my head.
I
Make it
think
a
that'll happen tonight. Even if we lose, like I think it'll be more like 2015, somewhere around
Please,
there
I'll
if we
take
get
it.
some of the guys back. Oh my gosh. Well, just looking at some of the Spurs' other games coming up, other than the one tonight in Phoenix, they'll have Monday against Washington, and then
Mm.
on Wednesday they'll have Sacramento, and Friday against Philadelphia. That's actually a 4-game homestand for the Spurs. So back in San
Mm.
Antonio, we should have the post games back now that we're back on Central Time.
Yeah, for
We're
real.
not, the games aren't starting at almost 10 o'clock. We should be back with those this week for sure.
Friday I won't be able to do because I'll actually be
No
at that
worries.
game.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
I'll make sure to
Uh,
yell something derogatory to Embiid,
yeah.
and I'll say
At
that's
least
from
you're going to
Jude
get to see
McLaren.
him to play. Yeah. Yeah. Just say it's all for me. And then Joel's going to come jump me.
Yeah,
But it's
perfect.
okay. He's having to pay fines for the DX thing.
25,000 bucks.
Oh my gosh.
Poor
Crazy.
guy.
Crazy. Well, we appreciate you guys hanging out and talking Spurs with us for about an hour here. I know some of the trade talk's a little bit repetitive, but it's kind of like that's the buzz right now. That's what everybody's talking about. That's what everybody wants to hear. So we dove into that. Charles Bassey and Don Barlow are looking great in the G League. We love to see it. And hopefully we don't get blown out by 40 tonight. That's kind of the hope. But we appreciate you guys. Even if we do, it's just increasing the lottery odds. Just remember that with every
Mm.
L. There were more L's in LA, but more L's towards lottery odds. That's how we got to think of it.
There we go.
We
There we go.
appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Go Spurs, go.